Here's a number that really should terrify anyone about to buy a brand new electric car. Drive certain popular EVs off the lot, and within just 2 short years, they can lose nearly half of their entire value. Poof. Just gone. And a comparable gas-powered truck, over that very same 2 years, it might lose around 20%. So the electric car didn't just lose its value faster. It lost it more than twice as fast. And this isn't only a problem for you. In 2024, the rental giant Hertz lost a genuinely staggering $2.9 billion. Largely because the enormous fleet of electric cars it had so proudly bought was suddenly worth far, far less than it had paid. So, what on earth is actually going on here? Electric cars are supposed to be the future. Cheaper to run, kinder to the planet. So, why does their value seem to just evaporate the very moment you drive one home? The answer is a hidden cost that every single car has, but one that hits electric cars especially hard. It's called depreciation. And once you really understand it, you will never look at a shiny new car the same way again. So, let's follow the money. Let's start with the single biggest cost of owning almost any car, and it's the one most people completely ignore. It isn't the fuel. It isn't the insurance. It's depreciation. And depreciation is really just a fancy word for this. The value your car quietly loses every single day that you own it. It's a very real cost. You just don't actually feel it until the day you finally try to sell. The very moment a new car rolls off the dealer's lot, it is worth less. A year later, less again. It's a slow, steady leak of money, draining right out of the car the entire time it just sits there in your driveway. The number that captures all of this is the resale value, what someone will actually genuinely pay you for it later on. A car that holds its resale value is a great deal. A car that doesn't is quietly costing you a small fortune. Now here is the real headline. On average, electric cars have been losing their value noticeably, dramatically faster than gas cars. One study found that a typical 3-year-old EV had already lost more than half of its value, while comparable gas cars lost closer to a third. Same age, same mileage, wildly, painfully different outcome. Take a real-world example. Some Tesla Model Ys lost around 42% of their value in just 2 years. A comparable Ford F-150 pickup truck, over that exact same stretch, lost only about 20% of its value. And it really isn't only Teslas either. The early Nissan Leaf became almost a punchline for this. Some of them lost around 2/3 of their entire value in just 3 short years, as their modest driving range started to look worse and worse beside each shiny newer model. So if you'd bought both of them for the very same price, the EV owner lost more than double. Which raises the obvious question. Why? What on earth makes an electric car bleed its value so much faster? Well, the first big reason sits right underneath the floor of every single electric car, the battery. And it is, by quite a long way, the most expensive single part of the entire vehicle. In a lot of EVs, that one component alone can be worth a third, or even more, of the whole car's value. You're not really buying a car that has a battery. You're buying a giant, wildly expensive battery, with a car wrapped around it. And here's the catch. Used car buyers are genuinely nervous about that big battery. How long will it really last? What happens as it slowly degrades over the years? And just how terrifyingly expensive is it to actually replace? And that uncertainty is absolute poison for resale value. When buyers aren't sure how much life is really left in the single most expensive part, they will only pay a low, cautious price, and so down the value goes. The second reason is genuinely brutal, and it comes straight from the carmakers themselves: price cuts. To keep on selling brand new cars, companies like Tesla have repeatedly slashed their prices, sometimes by many thousands of dollars, almost literally overnight. Now, just imagine you bought yours last year, and suddenly, a brand new version of it costs far less than you paid. So, why on earth would anyone pay good money for your used one? Every single price cut on a new EV instantly drags down the value of every used one out there. Now add in government tax credits that constantly shift and change, making the real price a moving target. And the whole used market gets even more confused and even more nervous. And more nervousness always means lower prices. And then there's a third reason, one that makes electric cars feel a little bit like smartphones. The underlying technology is improving at a genuinely blistering, relentless pace. Every single year, the new models get more range, faster charging, smarter software, which quietly makes last year's model suddenly feel old and dated, even if it still drives absolutely perfectly well. It's the very same reason a 3-year-old phone is worth almost nothing at all. It still works perfectly fine, but sitting next to the shiny new one, it just feels obsolete. And nobody, anywhere, pays a premium for obsolete. So just stack all three reasons together: the scary battery, the constant price cuts, and the fast-aging technology, and you have got the absolute perfect recipe for a value that falls straight off a cliff. Which brings us right to the most expensive lesson of them all, the genuinely cautionary tale of Hertz. Back in 2021, the rental giant made a huge, splashy, headline-grabbing bet on the future. It ordered around 100,000 electric cars, mostly Teslas, with enormous fanfare. But then, reality bit down hard. The used value of all those cars sank like a stone, dragged right down by all of those Tesla price cuts. Hertz found itself losing, by some estimates, over $500 per car every single month, purely from the value melting away. So Hertz slammed the eject button. It dumped around 30,000 of its electric cars, selling Teslas that it had bought for over $40,000 for under $20,000. And that whole misadventure helped drive a yearly loss of nearly $3 billion. And honestly, Hertz was just the single loudest example of all. The very same shock quietly rattled rental fleets and leasing companies right around the world. All of them suddenly forced to mark down exactly what their fast-growing piles of electric cars were really, truly worth. But, and this is genuinely the fun twist in the whole story, one person's disaster is another person's absolute bargain. Because if you happen to be buying used instead of new, then fast depreciation is suddenly your very best friend. You can pick up a 2-year-old electric car for a huge discount and just let that first owner quietly eat all of the lost value for you. And honestly, a lot of those scary battery fears are turning out to be wildly overblown. Real-world data increasingly shows EV batteries lasting far, far longer than all the early panic ever suggested. The scare may be much bigger than the actual risk. And as the technology matures and the prices finally stabilize, this brutal depreciation really should start to ease. It's partly just the growing pains of a young, fast-moving market, not necessarily some kind of permanent curse. So the big lesson here isn't really that electric cars are somehow bad. It's that depreciation, that silent, daily little leak of value, is the true cost of owning any car at all, and across 2024 and 2025, it just happened to hit EVs especially hard. A scary battery, relentless price cuts, and lightning-fast technology all gang up together to make a new EV's value fall straight off a cliff. Which is wonderful news if you are buying used, and rather painful if you're buying new. So the next time you find yourself dazzled by a brand new electric car, just ask the one question nobody at the dealership ever wants you to ask. Not what does it cost to buy, but what on earth will it be worth when I finally want to sell?